How can you tell if you're the bottleneck in your construction business, and what do you do about it? Is it possible to grow your business without taking on more stress and headaches? And how do you transition from working in your business to working on your business? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on this episode of the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, spelled D-A-W-A-L-T. I'm your host. And here at Construction Leading Edge, we're all about helping construction business owners have more freedom, more impact, and more wealth by systematizing your construction business. Here's what you're going to get from today's interview with Travis Balcom, the owner of TAB Companies. We talk about how Travis figured out that he was the bottleneck in his business and what he did about it, how he transitioned from being an employee to being an electrician to being a residential general contractor, doing renovations and building custom homes. We talk about some practical ways to empower your team and delegate effectively. Travis shares some of the most impactful things that he learned from our Systematize Your Construction Business program. And Travis talks about how life and business are different for him after the work that he's done. So Travis is one of the best implementers that we've worked with in our Systematize Your Construction Business program. And we're looking forward to seeing the results he's going to get and the things he achieves now that he's in our CEO Alliance as well. So without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Travis Balcom. Enjoy. Travis Balcom, welcome to the podcast. How's it going today?
Great. How are you, Ted?
Good. So let's jump in and we're going to talk about some of the things you've done to transform your business, where it was before, where it is now, what's different. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your business. What's the name of your company? Where are you located? And what kind of work do you do?
Okay. My name is Travis Balcom. I'm owner of TAB Construction LLC. I'm a custom home builder. We do little remodeling as those jobs come in. We're located in upstate New York in a little town called Andes, New York.
Got it. And let's talk about your story. How long have you been in business? And then take us back and walk us through the process of you starting your company.
Okay. I've been in business full time for about 8 years. Prior to them, I've actually started my business 10 years ago. I worked at it weekends and off season of a commercial company that I used to work for. So I started about 2 years prior to going full time on my own. I traveled all over the Northeast building athletic stadiums. So I did large commercial projects. Just realized when my wife told me we were pregnant with our first child that I wanted to see my kids grow up, and that's when I made the move.
So athletic stadiums, what were these, like some of the big, like NFL, MLB athletic stadiums, or what exactly were you building?
So we did anywhere from professional giant stadium to private high schools, public high schools, anywhere in between that. So
interesting.
We did running tracks. So
okay. So you mentioned in the off season you started doing your business. What do you mean? What was the season you're referring to?
So because we were working in upstate New York, we would get shut down through the winter months due to weather. So rather than going on unemployment, I decided to start my business. I went to a career school and got a career diploma in residential electric, and that's what I was going to be. And then, when I went full time on my own, I was simply just going to do residential electric, and it kind of grew from there. Where I got offered a full build house from a contractor that was retiring, and that's when it all kind of clicked. But that's what I wanted to do, and so I went into full builds and hit the ground running. So
interesting. That's a unique way to get into residential building. So tell me a little bit more about that. You were doing residential electrical. That was your goal, and talk us through how you were approached with for this new build, and how'd you make that pivot from electrical to being a home builder?
So the job that I got offered was actually, so when I worked commercially, this guy, John Hilson was his name, he was the client. He was actually retiring from the company I was working for. So I knew him personally as an individual, and when the contractor that was retiring kind of passed the job on to me, John kind of knew my work ethics, and we always got along good in the commercial world, and he knew I could do it, and he put a lot of trust in us, and that's kind of when we put it together. That's where I really truly want to be. Since then, I actually can't stand doing electric work. I really am a builder at heart.
So talk us through the first. When did that happen? When did you get this first new build project? What year was that?
It was about 2016, 2017, somewhere in that area. I was really just leaving. I was kind of phasing out of Clark's at the time and getting kind of things going. I had a few projects before that I started with. Big remodel job, but it was more of the contractors doing the remodel. I was only the electrician on site. Really realized that I couldn't really accomplish anything because I also offered service calls for electric. So I'd no more and get started on working on a project, my phone would ring and I would have to drive to the other side of the county to do a service call, and then so that's when I really started to think, like, is electric really what I want to be in on, or at least as a service provider. But that's
so. Tell us about what was it like the first couple of years, 2016, 2017. You started transitioning the business. What were those first few years of business like? Was it just you trying to manage everything by yourself? Did you have a team? What was that like?
It was all me. Everything was in my head. I had one guy that actually started right out of high school with me. He graduated on a Saturday and started that Monday. Really knew nothing about construction. He's still with me. He's actually a site supervisor now. He's phenomenal. But we just kind of worked through things. We worked, as many hours as we could work, not so much on the job, but also planning and trying to make the next steps happen, keeping clients happy, So really, I would just see a place where I was weak and try to fulfill it. So,
yeah, I'm curious about the transition from being an electrician to a home builder. I think that, as I mentioned, that's kind of a non-traditional path. What do you think are some of the skills that you learned as an electrician that transferred over to home building and remodeling?
So I don't know if I'll directly answer this question, but one positive thing about it is, even though I don't, practice electric anymore, I do have an electrician as a sub that I use. But I love the fact that when I'm talking with my clients, that I know what I'm talking about as far as electric systems. Same with I'm NATE certified in geothermal. I will probably never install a geothermal system, but I went and got educated and went and got trained so I could give an educated opinion to my clients. So that's why I think the most beneficial thing about all this stuff when it comes to building is just being educated in every aspect. So as a GC, I can give educated opinions. Is this a good for your particular project? Is this not a great fit? Things like that. So
yeah. So you've been working with our team here at Construction Leading Edge for a while. What were some of the challenges or issues that you were dealing with that led you to reach out to us initially?
So I've heard you say this thousands of times. The biggest problem was myself. I was the bottleneck. Everything was in my head. I felt like I needed to be involved with every aspect of business. And after joining the SYCB and actually more or less calling out the downfall of my business was the fact that I was the bottleneck, and the reason I had to work endless amounts of hours in the office nights is because I was the only one that knew anything about the project, so I had a severe case of the jet syndrome. Give my guys just enough information to get them started. So
I'm curious. Obviously, you're not alone. Just about everybody we work with deals with those things. But I heard you say you felt like you needed to be involved in everything. What was behind that? Why did you feel like you needed to be involved in everything?
Maybe a little bit who I am. Maybe just not a good delegator. Maybe building that trust in my employees. So I think it was just my nature. I think it's probably everybody's nature at some point in their career of owning a business that, you think, well, I'm the owner, I have to make that decision. And in fact, there's plenty of people out there that are competent to make decisions on their own without needing me. So.
And when you reached out to us initially, tell us a little bit about what your company looked like. How many employees did you have? What type of projects were you doing at the time?
So I had about 12 full-time employees and one bookkeeper in-house. We were building probably 3 to 5 houses a year. Just me running nonstop, me doing crew planning, me doing, invoicing, me working with subcontractors and schedules. And, I would go home for dinner and then leave my wife and kids and head back to the office at 9 o'clock at night and work until, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then get up and do the same thing starting at 5 o'clock the next day. I really realized that something had to give. There was a couple bad things that were going to happen. Two in particular was I was going to end up divorced, and my kids were going to hate me. So, and the reason I left the commercial world is because I wanted to see my kids grow up, and essentially building a business that was never going to happen. So.
Hey, it's Todd here. We'll get back to the show in a second, but real quick, what if you're leaving profit on the table because there's a crucial phase of every construction project that you're already doing, but you're just doing it too late? If you're a custom home builder, a remodeler, or a commercial GC doing over $1 million a year, here's the hard truth. You could be carrying risk way too long, leaving your profits and your company exposed unnecessarily. Maybe you're scrambling to lock in subs and materials at the last minute, dealing with profit erosion because of unexpected cost increases and scope gaps. What if there's one step that your competitors are using to boost profits on their projects that you don't even know about? Well, that crucial phase is the buyout phase. A lot of small construction businesses don't have an effective buyout process or may not even know what it is. That's why I put together the How to Buy Out a Construction Project Playbook. It's a free step-by-step guide that shows you how to structure your buyout, how to lock in pricing, secure subs, and protect your profits before you even show up on site. There's a playbook you can download, a masterclass training video, and a buyout checklist you can just download, print, and start using on every project. Think about it. Would it be a bad idea to spend a few minutes to download a playbook that could add 3, 5, or 7 points to your bottom line net profit on every project? It's a simple adjustment that you can make in a short amount of time that has a huge impact potentially. So go grab your copy now over at constructionleadingedge.com/buyout. That's constructionleadingedge.com/BUYOUT. Now, let's get back to the episode. And how long had that been going on? Was this something that had just been going on for a couple of months, or had it been longer?
I would say through the years of COVID, as increase of demand picked up, and as I continued to grow, and things just kept getting more and more and more, and I got to the point, say a year and a half ago from this date, that I really realized that something had to change, and I was getting ready to throw in the towel, go back to work for somebody else, and and that's where I was going to be. And then, like I said, I joined SYCB, and it gave me a whole new outlook on growth and trying to get things, processes in place. And so,
yeah, I want to talk about what's different now. But you mentioned the JETS syndrome, the just enough to start, where we do just enough to start. And I'm curious, what were some of the side effects or the symptoms that you were dealing with that you realized could be traced back to doing just enough to start?
Really, to me, it's just about planning, like planning the next step and the next step and the next step, where if you're going out in the field with, like I said, just enough information to get started, maybe guys were finishing what they could and then calling me and be like, hey, we're done with this. What's next? Or you do something and get it started, and then an owner comes in and wants to change something, or, so there's a lot of downfalls. There's no positive thing about giving your crew just enough information to get started. I feel in the commercial, especially in the commercial, but in the construction industry, it's all engraved in our heads to get a shovel in the ground and get the job started. Since SYCB, I'm the exact opposite of that. To me, it's let's have a very thorough pre-construction. So when we go do that project, 80% of that work is already complete. So we're just physically building the project. And I think all in all, it's going to give clients such a much better, project all around, including just the fires and, the clear expectations of what's going to happen. So,
yeah. So for people who are listening and they're like, that kind of sounds familiar, but they're not really sure if they're dealing with if they're stuck in the just enough to start trap. What would you say? How would you help them diagnose? Like, what questions would you ask them that would be symptoms of doing just enough to start?
I don't think you can't give your crew guys enough information about a project. There's always things. We built checklist after checklist, to the point where it's almost as a CEO, like you feel like you're being a little micromanaging, but it's not really a micromanaging step. It's just to have that checklist that you've made it through this. Or when they're going out to the field, for as simple as safety, you have fire extinguishers on site, you have a first aid kit on site, you have your signage you need, things like that. Because we're all humans, we forget things. So building a checklist in place that we can just check it off the list. Yep, it's with us. It's in the truck. We're ready to go start. So I would say, to answer your question, just kind of step back and look at your projects and see, like, do your guys or do your field people, crew, have what they need to continue to do the project efficiently?
Yeah. So what I heard you say through the conversation so far was you were working late hours. You had guys calling you saying, hey, what do we do now? Sounds like you were in reactive mode a lot, spending a lot of time dealing with fires, all of which are classic symptoms of just enough to start. So it sounds like it was affecting you. What were some of the ripple effects of some of this chaos that you were dealing with? You're working long hours. You are, I think you said you were at a point where you're thinking about you had to make a decision, something had to change. What were some of the ripple effects of that, or what other parts of the business were being affected by some of those issues?
So I'm going to start with that I'm very lucky. My crew is very loyal. My team is very loyal. We were all affected by it. I've had some late night, deep discussions with my site supervisor, Sam, that, things weren't right, borderline arguments about why we couldn't do something. But in all, I skipped away, very lucky that they trusted me and are loyal to me, that that we're going to become better. And so I would say, to answer your question, my entire company was affected by it. So right to the bookkeeper, where she wasn't sure of what aspect are we at for billing, where are things at. So I would say the entire company. So
yeah. And how many, this is usually a pretty good measure, how many phone calls and texts would you say you received every day back then?
So one bad thing in my area is we don't have cell phone service. So it wasn't at night is when I would get all the calls. When we got back into service, my phone would essentially blow up, and and that's what led me to be in the office nights, really late hours of trying to answer all these firefighting questions, so I was ready to go the next day. So I would say it would be nothing for me to get 10 voicemails and 30, 40 text messages, from various people, whether it's my team, subcontractors, supply yards, are we delivering this today? Are we coming tomorrow? Or, just, so really, like I said, it all goes down to I was the problem, but as a CEO, it's really hard to recognize that.
Tell me about that. Why was it hard to recognize that you were the bottleneck, you think?
The human brain. I feel like it's so much easier to point the finger at somebody else than it is to point it at yourself. And, and it's always, well, why didn't you do that? Well, when they answer you, well, you didn't give me direction on it, or, and as me coming from a background in construction, like, it's easy for me to make a decision because I'm the owner. I take the risk, but in all fairness to their shoes, where they want to please me, they're not out to take that decision unless you show them that, like, hey, I trust you, make your decisions. I'll back you on them. They're not always going to be right, but we're going to make them right, things like that. So,
yeah. So you joined our Systematize Your Construction Business program, or SYCB, got in there, started making changes, putting systems and processes in place. So take us back to, I'm curious if there was a specific moment where you realized that the systems that you were implementing and the work you were doing was actually working to solve some of those challenges. Was there a specific moment? And if so, tell us about that.
So I would have to say the number one thing that really set the groundwork for me was the big five. Breaking down my company from laborers to superintendents to project managers to admin and finance to myself, and really laying out, like, this is your big five. This is the most important things you have to do on a daily basis. One thing was for my the field crews to clock in and clock out every day using co-construct, making sure they logged in what job they were on. And that was stuff that I was managing after hours, trying to put all this together and make sense of it all so I could present it to clients. So I would say the number one thing was the big five, and that's really got us all thinking of how we can start working off a process versus a fly by the seat of our pants. So,
gotcha. So the big five, and then what about? Tell us a little bit about your nail the handoff session you had with your team. How did that go?
The nail the handoff was amazing. That was my second thing. It really showed the importance of actually feedback from the people that are using the process. So we got our whole team in here and really let them give us feedback of, like, what do you want to see on a project? What would you consider a complete job book? Final set of construction documents, not a working set that they're still trying to develop. I want a final set to hand to my crew. Owner selections, having that detailed list of what we're going to put in your house. And in all fairness, that, or a side note to that, is I was bidding work based on a bunch of assumptions. So essentially, I was not given an accurate price to my clients. It was kind of a ballpark assumption price. So that's what it really opened up my eyes, is like being a good GC is having to work with your clients early on in the process, developing a pre-construction, really work with your clients to figure out all the unknowns and know the ins and outs of a project before you put the shovel in the ground. So,
yeah. I'm curious how your team responded to the nail the handoff session. Some people have some concerns about it. This is a big it's one of the pivotal moments or pivotal milestones in the Systematize Your Construction Business program. Some people wonder, like, what's my team going to think? Are they going to think it's goofy? Is it going to be a waste of time? Is it just going to be silent when I get my team together? Or is it going to be a bitch fest where everybody just complains about everything? How did you feel? Or how did your Nail the Handoff team session go? How did your team respond to it? And what sort of effects did you see from going through that process?
So I'm going to step back a month before I had my Nail the Handoff, and so I feel like I hit it a perfect time to join the SYCB. It was January 1st. We shut down between Christmas and New Year's. When we shut down that week, I told my crew or everybody in the company that there was going to be some major changes when we come back January 3rd. I had already started SYCB, kind of saw where it was pointing me in the direction to go. So January 3rd, I brought my crew in, to my whole company in individually. I set up employee assessments. And I kind of gave them their weaks and strengths and ways to fix their weaknesses, or in my eyes, a way to improve on their weaknesses. That kind of set the tone, and I really got really good feedback from all of them. It was, they were telling me, "Oh, this is great. Thanks for pointing this out to me." And then when I got going through SYCB and we did the Nail the Handoff, the site supervisor, they really thought it was good, because essentially these guys are the ones that struggle through getting through a project with the unknowns. And I've gotten feedback where you almost lose your confidence in what you're doing. If you do something and then all of a sudden somebody changes it and you do it again and somebody changes it, you get to the point where you have no more confidence in yourself. You're like, what am I supposed to be doing? Almost like you want the client or the architect to stand over your shoulder and build it how they want it, So I think it was a great thing to put in place for my crew, that, they see the outcome. Obviously, I am still not done. Every time we think we nailed the handoff, it's like, oh, we missed that. We gotta improve on that. But I think it's something that's just going to be a continuous improvement. So,
hey guys, Todd here. If you own a custom home building or remodeling business, let me ask you a few questions. First, how often do you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about project details, financial issues, or something else about your business, and you can't go back to sleep? Are you spending more than 10 hours a week working in the business, wearing multiple hats, putting out fires, and you feel like you can't work on your business as much as you want? Number 3, do you have enough documented systems and processes, or is it all in your head? Number 4, how good is your handoff of projects from the office to the field? Are you getting hammered by the just enough to start trap, doing just enough to start? And then lastly, do you feel stuck? Do you feel like you need to grow, but you're scared to, and you don't know how to do it? Maybe it feels like you need to hire, but you're afraid to make a mistake, and you're worried you can't afford to hire somebody. Well, if any of that resonates with you, you're not alone. And if you want to make your business a source of more freedom and a source of less stress, to systematize your construction business. And our team here at Construction Leading Edge has helped over 300 builders and remodelers systematize their business, and we can help you too. The first step is to schedule a call with my team by going to constructionleadingedge.com/apply. That's constructionleadingedge.com/APPLY, or you can send a text to this number, 877-755-2410 with the word apply. That's 877-755-2410. Just text the word apply and we'll get back to you. Now, let's get back to our episode. So let's talk about, well, you did a lot of work. So you focused on nailing the handoff, or in other words, that's our term for having a pre-construction process. And that's how you defeat the just enough to start syndrome. It sounds like the big five list for each of your team was important. What else would you say were some of the most impactful changes you made in your business, or the specific, were there any other specific systems and processes that you implemented that had some positive effects for you?
So the next one would be the accountability chart. The accountability chart is another major aspect of business that I never really knew how important it was. It almost the way it's set up, it almost like it puts a checks and balance place at every step of the way. Just 2 weeks ago, I actually went to a site and it wasn't very clean, and I was a little aggravated. So I took the site supervisor aside. I'm like, "Hey, man, what's wrong with your site? Blah blah blah. Why isn't it picked up?" And he actually looked at me. He goes, "Hey, I'm really tired of getting appealed about this." And I'm like, "So what do you think you should do?" He's like, "Well, I need to have a talk with my crew, and because this is part of their big five of keeping the site picked up." I'm like, "Well, I suggest you do." And that was the end of it. He called this crew in Monday morning. I told them I wasn't going to be a part of it, like handle it, and if you had any problems, come talk to me. But they handled it, and so I feel like having that accountability and chart where having that point of contact, like, Sam, this is your job. Handle it with your crew. If they don't respond to you, then come to me and talk to me, and I will handle it. But going to him first was huge. So.
How do you feel like your team responded to having clearly defined roles and responsibilities, where they know exactly what they're accountable for? How did they respond to that? Was it positive? Was it negative? Was it neutral? What do you think?
So again, we're still working on the accountability chart. It's something that doesn't just lay out perfectly, but mostly a positive thing. Most of it was, it's just like everybody. If you can tell somebody what you're expecting clearly, and they know and they understand it, they're obviously going to be more happier than getting yelled at like, "Well, you didn't do this." Well, because you didn't tell me. But just knowing what those roles are and clearly defining them, clearly talking through it, because that's the other thing too. It's everything I've implemented, I've never just handed them a sheet of paper like, "Oh, this is what we're doing now." This is something we talk through. We have many meetings about it. I want to get feedback from them. I have built many processes, and when I say that, I've built many documents, I should say, that for crew planning. Like, "Hey, let's try this out." And I spent an hour messing around with it because it was kind of fun for me, and gave it to them. And they're like, that doesn't work." And I'm like, "Okay, perfect." And I tell them, like, I don't want to continue to do something. If it doesn't work for you in the field that's using the document, then just tell me and let's try something else. So I think by setting these processes in place, it gives you're working more as a team versus because they're giving me feedback, or my in-house crews that are building these processes, they're giving us the feedback like, "This doesn't work for me. I'm still having trouble finding a folder for that job. How can we improve that?" So it's just a continuous improvement of the whole entire company rather than just me.
Yeah, nice. I'm curious. Typically, there are some challenges with implementing changes, doing different things. There are old habits that have to be broken. There are new skills, challenges. It's not easy to change. So is there a specific example of a challenge you overcame with what you learned in the Systematize Your Construction Business program?
I mean, for me personally, it was just the fact of delegating to my crew, thinking that I had to be there every step of the way, having a process put in place where I could send a crew out in a difficult, whether we're pouring a concrete slab or framing a house or whatever we may be doing. But the fact that I wasn't there. That was really hard for me to let go of that. But because we have the information in place that I could just hand off and be like, this is what you're doing, quite frankly, my crew is doing it better than I could myself. And it took me a long time to realize that, like, all they really need to know is what they're doing. So having that set in place and watching them grow as individuals in the company is really fun to watch. So
nice. So you've done a lot of work. As I said before we hit record, we have a list of the best implementers that we work with, people who just chew through the program, they show up, they do the work, they get results, they implement. And as I shared with you, your name's at the top of that list of some of the best implementers, which is one of the reasons that we're talking today. But I'm curious, let's talk about some results, right? What are some of the results you've experienced? In other words, what's different about your business now?
So, just pick one aspect of the whole process systems that we're putting in place is like crew planning. We treat every week as a crew planning on Tuesday for next week's work. I look at it as more of a pre-construction for next week's MITs. How can we get this set up? How can we make sure materials on site? How can we make sure we have the right tools on site, the right crew on site? And also giving it to the crew and the leads this early on in the week, it gives them time to actually think about what they need, what their next steps are. It might be something they can use this week to kind of set themselves up for success for next week, things like that. In construction, there's nothing, this step always leads to the next step. So how can we set ourselves up for success for that next step? So
let's talk about planning for a little bit. What's different about the planning process now? Were you doing a lot of the planning before? And it seems like you were doing a lot of the planning. People were asking you questions like, hey, what are we doing tomorrow? You were fielding all the questions. It sounds like you've delegated a lot of that planning to your team. Am I reading that right?
Yep. So a year ago, I did all the planning. I'd walk in the office at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd have 12 people looking at me and what are we doing today? And I would rattle off the top of my head, this is what we're doing. And we tried group text. We tried, posting things on a chalkboard in the office, but we just never stepped back and really made a plan. It was always through me. Now I have a project manager. She does the crew planning with the two site supervisors. They meet. The site supervisors go to their leads every Monday. They kind of make a plan together, document it. They bring it to the project manager on Tuesday morning, and they kind of review the job schedule, review the crew sizes, and then they essentially build their crew or their plan for the following week by themselves. And we're just kind of here just to make sure, or Sarah, I should say, my project manager is there just to more or less kind of have a check of, is it lining up with the job schedule? Can we, this job over here has a tight schedule. We're trying to get ready for drywall. Can we steal a couple guys to make sure that happens this week, to buy us some time? So I am actually no longer involved with the crew planning, which is quite nice. So I went from having 12 guys stare at me every morning to not even being involved with it. So.
And have you, were there any unexpected positive benefits to having your crew actually do the planning? In other words, here's a better question. Does it work better when your crew does the planning? The people doing the work do their own planning? Does that work better than you doing all the planning for them?
Absolutely. For nothing the least is they take the ownership. They know what they're doing. They want it. They want that planning. They want that ownership in that. And also, they're on the job every day. They know, okay, we left off of this because we got rained out, but I left that aside until the next nice day. But now we're started inside, so let's complete this. But they know they left that kind of loose end on the exterior of the building, which with me not being on site every day, I would never know that. So, so them taking ownership in it and planning themselves, yes, it's way better. So
yeah,
way more efficient.
So yeah, that's what I found as well. Is it's better to delegate the planning and the decision making to the people who are closest to the problem, the people on the front lines. And I think this is a big misconception. There's a misconception that he or she who is higher on the organizational chart is best equipped to make decisions and do the planning. But what I found is he or she closest to the problem is best equipped to do the planning because they can see it. Nothing's getting lost in translation. Like you said, they know all of the details, the stuff that's never going to show up in a daily log or even a picture, or even if you were on the site every day. And I think that's one reason people are the bottleneck, is because they think they have to do all the planning. So that keeps them stuck. But I think it works a lot better when the people closest to the problem do the planning. I'm curious, what's different about your day-to-day schedule now? Sounds like you don't have 12 people looking at you in the morning asking what to do, but what's different about your day-to-day schedule now? What are you spending less time doing? What are you able to spend more time doing? Tell us what's different about your schedule now.
So I am working on the business instead of in the business, which is a huge help. And personally, being able to support my wife in picking kids up from school or taking them to school, or, my kid just had 4-H camp last weekend. And my wife's like, hey, can you take Declan to 4-H? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Where I never could say that. It was always, well, I gotta go to the office first and get the guys going, and then I'll come back home, So it was always the personal side of life was always pushed on my wife. So now I have the time to do that, and not only is it the time, I also know that things are happening efficiently without me being here. So yeah.
What are some when you say working on the business, what exactly are you able to spend time on that would qualify as working on the business now?
Just growing the business, taking on, working on my company's visions, same thing, talking through processes, having time to think about a new idea that I can go to my team and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Is this something we should implement, or is it just, something that was a waste of my time thinking about it? I was actually reading the book Traction, and part of the book, it says 9 out of 10 thoughts of a visionary don't go anywhere. And it's kind of a joke now in my company that it's like, okay, here's one of my 9 out of 10 thoughts, but having the time to actually have the thoughts is huge. So, because that one thought that's a good one can make a big difference. So,
yeah, absolutely. You may have already answered this, but what's different about your personal life outside of work? It sounds like you're able to spend more time. You have some more freedom and flexibility, but what else is different about your personal life outside of work?
For me, mentally, just not totally run down. When I do, a weekend comes and my kids want to go mountain biking, I'm ready to do it with them. I have the energy. I'm rested. I'm ready to have fun with them. So, and just having the time to have relationships that I never made time for. So, seeing grandparents, seeing my parents, things like that. I just was always, I got to take care of business. So.
Yeah. What sounds like before your evenings were spent responding to emails and texts and planning for the for the next day. Are you still getting the same number of texts and phone calls that you have to respond to at night? Or is that better?
95% better. I have every once in a while I get a new client email where they got my email from a friend that gave us a recommendation. But really, the emails that I'm kind of skimming through nights or throughout the course of the day, when I have that time set aside to check my email, it's really just kind of reading through my project manager or my site supervisors that's CCing me on things that they're taking care of it, just so I'm kind of in the loop. But I'm essentially not really responding to any emails unless it's a business transaction that I'm working on personally. So,
okay, nice. So, what advice would you give to somebody if somebody called you and said, "Hey, Travis, I'm thinking about joining this Systematize Your Construction Business program," but they're on the fence? What advice would you give them?
So the way I look at it is, from my own thought, when I first was introduced to SYCB, it was almost, this is too good to be true. It's not that easy. My advice is, if you're stuck in a rut like I was, you have to do something, because you're essentially just burning yourself out, and it's not going to last. For experience, it's about 8 years for me, because I was ready to call it quits. So I would highly recommend the SYCB program. It's a great way to build some processes. It's a great community to be a part of, talking to other builders that are facing the same issues that we all do, and talking through them and developing that network of people that really want to grow in the right direction.
Yeah. So you've also joined our CEO Alliance, which is available for select folks who go through SYCB. What would you say has been the best part about being in the CEO Alliance for you?
I think it's still just continuing that network of people that you have to talk through some ideas, talk through some challenging situations with. It's funny, I actually got an email just before we started here from a guy in Canada that's looking at taking on a commercial project, and he reached out to the Delta group at the CEO Alliance, which I'm a part of, and wanted to know if anybody could help him look at this commercial project. And a lot of the people are in residential, and so I responded back to him like, "Hey, yeah, I'd love to have a talk with you." So myself and I actually contacted my project manager and told her the same thing, because she comes from the commercial world too, that, hey, we're going to help this guy out and answer any questions we can answer him. And just having that network of people that you can bounce ideas off of and get different perspective on things. So that's huge, and it keeps your motivation up to want to continue to thrive and continuous improve.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. How does it keep your motivation up? How does it help you stay motivated?
So it's very easy to fall back into old habits or kind of get relaxed on things. So when you're going through the CO Alliance, we have kind of expectations set by Manish, and he wants to see our rev maximizer, and it's easy to fall into old habits like, oh, I'll put that on the back burner. So, but knowing you have a deadline that you're committed to, it's kind of like going to the gym. It's much easier for me to exercise if I go to a gym than it is to do it on my own. So,
yeah, that extra accountability. That's what I've found is the best way to get results is to build in layers of accountability. That's what I found. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, you're on the list of the best implementers we've worked with, but implementing systems and processes is tough. Getting people to change is hard. Getting ourselves to change is hard. Getting other people to change and embrace new processes is hard. what would you say are one or two keys to implementing systems and actually making meaningful changes in your business? What are some tips for people who want to make meaningful changes in their business?
Get your entire team on board and get them involved and let them help you fix and make the changes and let them take ownership and helping you build some of the processes and, letting them be a part of the change. They don't necessarily agree with everything I come up with, but I don't necessarily agree with everything they come up with, but acting as a board to bounce ideas off each other and put the process in place based on everybody's thought versus just one person's thought is huge. So.
Yeah. It's I think a big mindset shift is shifting from like who's right to doing what's right, doing it my way. Like if you believe your way is the only way, your way is the best way, it has to be done my way, then you're going to be the bottleneck because it has to be your way and you're going to try to force people to do it your way. But if you let go of the how and you really delegate the how to your team and just focus on the end result, and you could say, look, I don't really care how you get there. This is the end result that we're looking for. And you've got some wiggle room to get there how you want. Then people get on board. And a lot of people find that it's easier to get things done when you let go of control and delegate more effectively. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. It goes back to that ownership. You allow somebody to give you some feedback and build that process that works for them. Because it might not be, I have 2 site supervisors. They might totally run 2 different processes, but it works for them how they run their jobs. So who am I to tell them, well, don't do it that way? As long as the end outcome is how it need to be, then I don't care how they get there. So.
Yep. Nice. So a couple of quick hit questions. What's one piece of advice about business you wish somebody had given you 10 or 20 years ago?
My favorite saying is, you can't manage people, you can only manage a process. So I wish somebody back then had told me, hey, make sure you have a process in place and, stating clear expectations and a fine, really detailed plan of, hey, this is how we do it. It's one of my favorite documents. Like, pick somebody off the street and let them read this document, and they should be able to start tomorrow with no questions. I never had that, so that would be one thing that I would love to tell an upcoming guy girl that's trying to build a company. Like, make sure you have a process in place. So,
yeah. So now that you've done a great job implementing systems, and you're exactly right. Never really feels like you're finished, and that's pretty normal. It's just a process of continuous improvement. What do you feel like is possible for you now that you have these systems and processes in place that wasn't possible or maybe even wasn't even on your radar before? Anything come to mind?
So one thing you told me back in SYCB, I'm pretty sure it was you, not Manish, but I actually mentioned one time, I can't wait until I'm done. And I think it was you, and you're like, what do you mean done? Like, you're retiring, you're selling, there's no such thing as being done. It's all about continuous, how can I continue to improve my processes? How can I continue to, be more efficient? So I think just continuing to improve and being open-minded of new ways of doing things. Even, I've built processes that we thought were like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And 2 days, we're already tearing them apart and implementing new things that we thought were already fit. Those cracks were already filled, but in fact they weren't. So it's just something you have to continuously be open-minded about. And every job has got its own little tweaks that you have to fill those cracks. So.
Yeah. Yep. Couple of quick hit questions. what is your hometown? And if somebody visits that town, what is the restaurant or bar they do not want to miss?
So my hometown is Andes, New York. It's a small town on the edge of the Catskill Mountains. We only have one restaurant or two restaurants in town.
Okay.
I would say that the go-to place would be the Andes Hotel.
The Andes Hotel. Is there anything specific there they should order? A drink, entree?
I would say the Surf and Turf. The owner of the Andes Hotel does a great job by bringing in fresh lobsters, and he has to travel for them. So,
got it. Very nice. And then, what is one book that you feel like every entrepreneur should read?
That's a tough one.
Could be a couple. If there are a couple at the top of the list vying for that spot, feel free to share more than one.
I mean, for me, is The Gap and the Gain. Just taking the wins out of even bad situations and celebrating those wins and coming out of every situation with a positive attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. So The Gap versus the Gain by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. Yeah. That's that whole concept. I would call it's almost a philosophy of living in the gap versus living in the gain. And we've talked about it on the podcast before, but what would you say focusing on the gain has done for you?
Just really, for me, it's like, it's so easy to look at other companies or look at other individuals like, oh, I want to be where they are, and not really looking back to where you started from versus where you are today. So that would be my biggest thing is I'm still inspired by many, many builders and many, many companies around the country, around the world that I see on social media and stuff. But it's really celebrating where I come personally as a business. So, and with my team on board. So,
yeah. Good stuff. So, Travis, if folks want to connect with you, follow you, learn more about what you're up to, where are some of the best places for them to do that?
I would say the best place is just look me up online at tabcompanies.com. We have some photos of our work, and you can get all our contact information off there.
Good stuff, man. Well, congratulations on your success so far, and I look forward to hearing even more results through your work in the CEO Alliance. So thanks for being part of SYCB, part of the CEO Alliance, and thanks for taking the time to be on here today, man.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank you, Todd, and your team. It's been a great experience working with you guys. So
I appreciate that. Thanks, Travis. Hey, before you go, if you're a custom builder, remodeler, or commercial GC doing over $1 million a year, what if you're missing one crucial step that could protect your margins before you even break ground? That's why I put together the free How to Buy Out a Construction Project Playbook. It's going to show you how to lock in costs, secure your subs, and protect your profit before jobs start. Would it be a bad idea to spend a few minutes to download a playbook that could add 3 to 7 points of net profit to your bottom line on every project? You can go get your copy of that playbook and that training for free at constructionleadingedge.com/buyout. There's no guarantees how long this will be free. It's available now for a limited time. That's constructionleadingedge.com/buyout, BUYOUT.